Thank you. And thanks for staying back. I know after a couple of talks and lunch and everything else, it's hard to stay back. So thank you for staying back. As you can see, I look nothing like that in real life or in my dreams. So thank you, Justina, for creating that for me. Cool. So yeah, I'm Upkar. I'm a developer advocate for IBM. My information is up on the screen, so if you want to chat later, I'm usually on Twitter. So many cool presentations on future of bots, or future of virtual assistants. But it's amazing to me that even with all the smart people in this room and at this conference, there are still so many crappy bots out there, right? So I deal with developers across the Bay Area. I work on Watson cognitive services, Watson Assistant being one of them. So I talk to a wide range of developers. And so a couple of weeks ago, I created this blog post for that audience, right? Not for you guys, but for people who are very new to building bots. I set some, or I gave them some tips on how to make their bots usable. And I thought the talk earlier, as mentioned before, was on chatbots and serverless. And then I was told I'll be given 15 minutes. And so I took the serverless part out because that's a lot to do in 15 minutes. And I thought I'll go, not go through these points because, like I said, this is not for the audience here, but go through some of the features in the product I work on, Watson Assistant, and show you how we built these features into the product to help with some of these pain points. So yeah, like I said, some of them are really simple. So like set expectations. I usually show this picture where the first two virtual agents or assistants, and then the Slack bot by default. When you go to the page or when you first open it up, it gives me, it tells me what I can do with that experience, right? And I've seen bots where once I open it, it either says welcome and then stops, right? Or it says ask me anything, and those are both, I feel like, really bad situations to be in, because then the user will ask you anything and everything. So this was a simple example where it's telling me what all I can do. It's setting some expectations. The other ones are fairly simple as well. So remember historical context. A lot of people here talked about context, right? Between sessions, there was somebody here who said building relationships versus building a session, or context based on relationships, which was beautiful. So I think context, again, there are multiple ways. One is the immediate context in the conversation you're having right now with the users. They've told you something a minute ago. You need to remember that, and you need to take that into account when asking the next question or showing them the next result. There could be long historical context. So I work in the enterprise space, and then if you're dealing with customers who have logged into your banking site or your insurance site or retail site, then you know something about them from some persistent store. So you need to remember that and make use of that. And then finally, I think, depending on where they're logging in, I was talking to somebody outside. There's a company here that does interactive ads. So the user is clicking on an ad, and then they're going to a chatbot experience from that ad. And that tells you a lot of direct information about the customer who's using it, but also other context that you can get out of that. Handle off-topic questions. That's an interesting one as well. I have an example later on, so I'll skip that. The one I get asked most about is how to use AI, and I'm using the term AI in very vaguely here, which I think is okay to the audience I was pitching these 10 tips to. And so for us, it may mean NLP, NLU. How do you use that in your bot? And I have some examples of that as well. Give the user a way out. I've seen way too many times where the user, may be shouting agent again and again, and there's no help, right? So give them an elegant way to leave your bot. I've read articles where people have started gamifying their bots. So every time the user comes back, maybe they get some additional points versus them using other platforms or other channels. Ask for help. Ask your user to give you help. Google Assistant does this very well, where they have a thumbs up and thumbs down on everything they ask you, or every response they give back. And that's a direct response, or that's a direct help you're asking for from the user, and using that to evaluate your bot, if not improve it over time. The next one, Justina has a good, I've done a couple of meetups with Justina, and there's one point that she brings up where people send back selfies to chatbots or text-based bots, and it breaks their bot, right? So this is where if your chatbot is on the phone, expect voice to come in, expect video, photos to come in, and then handle that appropriately, not simply crash. The base platform, again, with Watson Assistant, what you do is you build conversations and you build dialogues, and then you deploy that on these different channels. And every channel, as was talked before, there's a talk on Slack after me, there's some expectations set on the channel itself. So if a user is using Facebook Messenger or the Slack channel, there are certain ways to do things, and you need to respect that. It's just like building apps for Linux versus Microsoft versus Mac. If you follow certain patterns, it makes it easier for the user. On that note, actually, Dan's sitting right here. He works for Bose, and he gave me these glasses. And if you wear them, it connects to your phone, plays an audio that is just audible to you, and you can give it commands. So we were thinking on how to use this to build an assistant or a bot, but I thought this was another good example of using a completely different platform than what at least I've been used to. I'm going to skip the last one. Cool. So for the AI part, what are the features in Watson Assistant that help you? First of all, Watson Assistant, like I said, it's a platform on IBM Cloud that is used to build conversation and sort of natural sounding dialogues. This is how it looks. I won't go into like the basics of, again, building a bot, because I feel like all of you are experts in that. But you have your intents, you have your entities, and you put everything together using a dialogue. And a dialogue is just a flowchart. You go from node to node. A node can be triggered. A node can be conditioned on, again, on an entity, on an intent, or on a context variable. And for intents, you give it some user examples. It needs at least 10, and then it kind of figures out the rest. Everything that you send to Watson Assistant comes back with some sort of confidence score, and you use that to improve the bot over time. So here's an example. A lot of people ask me, how do I get started, especially our enterprise customers. So there's a feature in Watson Assistant where you can give it a CSV file of user utterances, right? So CSV files of logs, call logs, chat logs, et cetera, et cetera. And this is a telecommunication customer. As you can see, there's like 3 intents at the bottom that the user has created. So a way to greet or to identify a greeting, unlocking a phone, the user needs help to unlock the phone. But those are the only 3. And now the enterprise customers usually have tons of data that they've collected otherwise outside of the chat platform that we want them to be able to use. So in this case, when I upload the CSV file, it gives me a lot of recommendations. So these are the additional intents that Watson's come up with, and this is an exercise in clustering all of my text data, right? So nothing super magical here. It's been done before, but now it's provided as part of the product. So in this case, it's come up with a few more, like can I use my phone in Canada when I travel there? How do I get insurance for my phone? What if I want to return a device? So once I have that, I can dive into any one intent and then start classifying or start correcting what Watson has provided me so far, right? And not only that, as I start creating new intents, I can go back to what was uploaded with the files, and then I can start training my model with new user examples from the log files. So one thing this does is for new customers and for clients, for enterprise clients, this is a good place. A lot of times they know like the top 3 intents. They always know, okay, this is what we always get hammered on. This is what we get asked. But then this one will give you the rest hundreds of intents that the user may ask. I actually took this. There's a Kaggle. What do they call it? Kaggle data set on a notebook that has utterances on Twitter for whenever people reference Amazon support, Twitter support, or Uber support. And I took that and put it in here. It worked really well. It gave me about 100 intents, and each one had about 20 to 30 different utterances. And all of that was from unseen data. But of course, now I have to go and manually make sure it looks right. But that gave me a good starting point. The other thing, actually, if I go back one more time, there's a little thing that says show only conflicts. So that's where if multiple intents, since this is being done automatically, if multiple intents have very similar examples or utterances, then your bot It's for your bot, it'll be hard to distinguish between which intent the user wants to work with, and so it gives you a way to show those conflicts, and then it's almost like doing a Git merge. It lets you clarify. The other one is disambiguation, which is, to me, very interesting. So that's where when the user says something and two or more intents are matched on that utterance that came in, there's a way that you can tell it to clarify with the user. And this is where you're asking user for direct help, right? So in this case, I'm doing, on the extreme left, you can see there are a couple of intents or nodes that fire on intents. One is cancel order, one is change my order. And then if the user says work with my order, which could mean either one of the two, then I'm not assuming the first one that it hit, but I'm saying use this feature to present to them all the intents that match up to, I think the threshold is like 0.5. If the confidence score is 0.5, then match it, and then it'll ask the user exactly what they want instead of guessing. Cool. Off-topic questions is also interesting. And the example I give is if you're booking an appointment and the bot says, what time do you want to come in? Generally, I don't say, 11/12/19. I usually say, I either tell it tomorrow or day after tomorrow, which is, again, some NLP happening in the back end, which is converting those phrases into dates, and the product offers that feature. But what this one does is, if I say to the bot, or the bot says, what time do you want to come in, and I say, what time are you open, right? Because I want the first available appointment. That's a very valid use case. So in that case, I'm asking it, instead of answering that intent, I'm asking it another question that'll help it fulfill that intent later on. And there's a feature called digressions that lets you tackle sort of off-topic but relevant questions in the dialogue. And then finally, there's this concept of interruptions, because that happens all the time when you converse with other people, right? So that you get interrupted from time to time. So this is where, for example, the user, you're booking an appointment, user says, I changed my mind. Thank you very much. I'll come back later. That's an interruption that happened. Or if the user wants to do something else first, that's an interruption that happened. It's a similar concept to digressions, but I feel like it's more of a hard stop. So that's, the product gives you a way to handle interruptions and digressions. And I think that's all I had. Again, my Twitter thing, what is it called? ID is on the screen if you want to get in touch later. There's 2 minutes left. I don't know if there's Q&A. Okay, cool. Do you have any questions on the product or about me? I'm Canadian from Vancouver. Not my fault. Good one.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.